I'm Next Games, and today I will be talking to you about designing with player segmentation data in our game, The Walking Dead No Man's Land. And it will be a really quick speed run, and we will really look from a top-level view, because I'm not a data analyst, but I will show you what the player segmentation is and how we do it, roughly, and then I will show you how we design. I will show you a little bit about our feature pipeline, how we make a feature based on what we found there. So let's get started. Actually here. Yes, agenda. Let's start with a quick introduction. I'll tell you a bit who I am, who Next Games is. Then I will tell you a little bit about games as a service, because that is the business model that we are working with. And then we are getting to the segmentation and the feature development pipeline. So let's start. Yes, my name is Jasmin. I'm a UX designer at Next Games. I have a background mainly in graphic design. I always worked in the games industry, as in I worked a lot on merchandise. So I did a lot of magazines and books back in the day. And then like 4 years ago, I entered the game industry as a UI artist and made the transition to a UX designer, because information hierarchy is really what's where my heart is at, creating an experience that is understandable and enjoyable to our players. That's what I do. And the company I work for is called Next Games. We mainly do games for really big franchises. So we work really closely with license holders to bring these TV shows or cinema movies or books in a game experience to the fans. That's what we do. Here you see some of our games. One of the first games we did was The Walking Dead No Man's Land. It's an RPG game based on the Walking Dead franchise, and we are actually making another game with this franchise. This time it's a Pokemon Go kind of game. It's a location-based game, so that's something really exciting and new also. And one of the other IPs currently is Blade Runner, but not much more has been announced about that. So yeah, that is something we are working on. But the game that I'm going to talk to you about is actually The Walking Dead No Man's Land. And I'm actually thinking that this video might not work. I really wanted to show this to you. Okay, but that's fine. It's basically, how many of you actually play games? Could you raise your hand so I can see how I need to explain this? So quite many of you play. So this is like a strategy game where you drag your characters in a turn-based manner, towards zombies and fight them. But because it's turn-based, you have a lot of time to think, hey, how am I going to do this move? And then you figure out, how to fight them. And because it's based on the IP, we have a lot of tie-ins with the show. We have their content. You can revisit locations that you have seen in the TV. You can fight the same badasses like Negan, or you can fight as Rick. So that is what it's all about. Games as a service. So this is really, I want to give you an introduction to this, because it's really important to why we do segmentation and how, based on this business. So it's called Games as a Service. It's not really new. I think every one of you knows free-to-play, for example. It's a continuous revenue model. It is really different from, how classically games were made. You had a really long pipeline for a couple of years. You made a thing, and then it comes out. For example, God of War, the new one. It took 5 years to make this game, and then you are purchasing it for €60. So you have made the initial sale, and then you can kind of forget about it. Nowadays, even a game like that gets patched, but back in the days, this wasn't the case. But nowadays, with the mobile phones and the PC in your pocket, games have evolved to this kind of devices, and one of the revenue models that came with this is this free-to-play games as a service that really took off, because it's really easy, of course, for people to try your product if it's for free, to get, to find out if they like it or not. So something that is also comes usually with these kind of products is that it's a live product with continuous development, and you usually wanted to have a really long life cycle to basically pay back the initial development costs. Yes, let's move forward. So something about the key performance indicators about this kind of business. So this is how we measure, our success based on these KPIs. Why are these 3 KPIs important? Because our game or our product being free initially, there has no sale been done like in the classic, video game business, we really, we really need people to come back. We need to like retain them, through engagement also, and we need to convert them basically at a later time, not through the initial sale, but they are coming back, and then they are making a purchase at some point based on something that that they had fun, based on a cosmetic maybe, or something other game-related item that they wanted to get. Yes, also something I really wanted to tell regarding this business, I don't know, most of you, I guess, make apps that maybe solve a problem for others. For example, Musician makes an app where I can learn an instrument. Or, there are apps that, book me a cab. We are making a game. We are not really solving a problem for people. So it's also much easier to drop something like a game. It's a pure entertainment kind of thing. It only does something like entertain you, and you can have some fun by playing, but it does nothing else in that sense. So yeah, you can quickly forget about this and deinstall if it doesn't work. There is no backlash for you, So that's important to understand also when making a game, I think. Yes, so let's get to player segmentation. And that is actually related to how do we get these. So we have these KPIs, right? We have this business model. People don't need to pay anything initially. Then we have these KPIs, like retention, engagement, conversion, that kind of, these need to work so that our business can be successful. So how can we, design, and with these on our mind or around them? And that is where this whole segmentation thing comes in, where we have a lot of data analysts who help us, who do initial research for us, and find things regarding these KPIs that, we can improve. So what is segmentation? It's basically about finding out who's your audience, who's using your product, where are they spending time in your product. For example, our game is really big. It has a lot of features. So really seeing from your data, okay, where are they and what are they doing, how they are progressing, it's quite important to find out. That is what this whole segmentation thing is. And I think most of you, have done the transition to be really data-driven companies. So, and it's the same for the gaming industry, basically. So this game audience, how can we identify different segments? We made a really basic approach. For example, this is like, I think 2 years ago now. We were thinking, hey, what missions do our players actually play? And let's make a segment based on this, because we have a lot of different missions in our game, because we have so many different features to fight zombies in all kinds of ways. So we are like, okay, let's make segments based on the missions that they are doing. And additionally, we can ask other questions then. For example, so you have these kind of audience segments, or player profiles, we also call them. So how do they actually progress related to the segment that they're in? Because people are aging or like also maturing throughout your product life cycle the longer they are staying in there. So they are not just going to stay in the same segment sometimes. They are moving from maybe from a beginner to a more advanced or elder player, we call it, and they do different things in the app. Because of for us it's about you progressed with your avatar or your player level, so other features will be available for you that will be much more interesting, for example. And that is what this is all about, finding out how do they progress, transition. And of course, important is also for us, how are the segments spending? Because, it's free to play. We really need to understand, okay, and this comes also from a way of, not just, monetizing as good as possible, no matter what, but it's about finding the fun and the engagement in something, so that that you value this kind of visual and coin that you are saying, that it has an inherent value for you to buy it, and you feel good about yourself, and you are like, hey, yeah, I bought this cool skin and it makes me look really cool. I really enjoy myself. This is what this is about. So this is what our data analysts did. They took 1 week of data. It's basically a snapshot, of our game in that 1 week. The main measure was, hey, what missions do these people play? They use a lot of other techniques like clustering and stuff. I don't really know about that, and that is a whole other presentation. It's crazy what you can do there. they are so smart, you know, I can't even understand. But it's really cool stuff that we get from them, you know, what they read from our app. So this is what they found. They found 5 basic player types. Story players, challenge players, the names are basically based on our features. You know, you can, I guess, story player, there is a story modus where you play, where we have our own part of the Walking Dead world where we've written little stories about it. Challenge players, this is a multiplayer feature where with your friends, with your guilds, you accumulate points from specifically designed zombie maps, for example. Grind player is again another feature. You are just, you know, grinding away in one specific mission that has very specific drops that you are after. And PvP, it's a player versus player mode where, you know, people basically fight against each other. And what they found is these 4, they are super engaged. They play 5 to 20 missions a day. They spend pretty well, you know, all the things, all the right KPIs, you know, retention, you know, engagement, conversion, you know, all working well. And then they also found this outlier. They called them the sleepers. So we were like, what is going on? That they are spending not a lot, and they are also there because they don't have fun. They are playing 1 to 2 missions a day, and it's like, okay, maybe we should investigate what's happening. Why are these guys, you know, have this erratic kind of behavior, you know, of not logging in so much and playing so much. So what we found when we looked a little bit more, and here you see a transition, what we looked at, or what we asked ourselves, hey, so how does this player transition throughout his life? You know, does he actually become, you know, one of the story players, or, you know, the others who are heavily engaged? But it turned out that no, either they stay the same, they stay at the same level 1 to 2 missions a day or every couple of days, or worse, even they churn. So, okay, and in really big amounts. So, you know, that was like kind of, you know, an alarm signal. We were like, okay, we need to understand a little bit more about that. So something that we knew about them from the player types was that they mostly play story. So the one reference we had was story players. So we were like, okay, we checked this for the sleepers, how they transition throughout the player profiles. Let's check for these story players if there's anything different for their kind of life cycle and how they transition through the profiles. And it turned out there was almost really, it was scary. There was almost no difference, you know. They, you know, transitioned exactly the same. So, and these were really engaged players, you know. We saw that they were really playing a lot every day, 5 to 20 missions, and they are also turning into either a sleeper and churning or into a churn player, never coming back. So we know, okay, something's up with our stories. What is it there? We need to take a look. And what we found is when we took a deeper look at what's happening there is that these story players, it's the first feature that we introduce in our product. So it's very early game, so very young players mostly, and it's really difficult for them to do anything else actually. First, the difficulty rises, so playing this kind of feature gets not so quickly, is not so much fun anymore because you need to level up a lot. But there are actually, we didn't unlock, you know, other features in time for them to engage with them. So you know, they couldn't really do anything. So that's why we figured out, hey, we need to do something about it. So the accessibility was bad, and the transitioning to other features was just not given, basically. That's what we found. And those are basically the findings from this whole segmentation. We had a really distinct problem now, or a question or challenge that we could pose or impose on design, that we could give the game designers, the UX designers. You know, we had all these transitions that we could show, hey, we have found the story, difficulty rises, other features are locked. And this goes then to the team. So now the dev team can actually, you know, take this problem and act upon it. And that is what is happening now. the feature development pipeline. Okay, so this is what we do. Now they come and talk to us. Usually we are already involved all the time with what is going on in the research, but now we get a proper, like, you know, onboarding. Hey, we have found this thing. So, you know, data analysts and game designers and UXers, they are like, you know, discussing what have been the problems. And now it's our job to find out how can we make this better for these sleepers? How can we alleviate the problems that they have been facing, basically, throughout the research that we just did? And there is a lot going on here, actually, that is not in the slide. You know, you check in with your team, you know. Something that I saw a lot now in the other talks, you know, and I can just, you know, repeat it again, you know, check in with your team. They, you know, most commonly, they already know kind of what's up. They had ideas already. They have experienced the same kind of pain points, you know, because they have played the product a lot, or they have interacted with your product a lot. They you know, might have really good ideas. And that is what happened here for me. I checked in with the team, and they already were like, yeah, we have this idea. We know about this problem since like a longer time, because it's not only for early game players. You know, I have also seen from my colleagues that they had problems maybe navigating the game, finding certain features. So, you know, there were other problems that would also feed into this. So what we decided to do was a mission hub, a central access point that would, you know, help guide players through 2 different features that would show you like what you would get, basically, so rewards. And in conjunction with that, we would need to balance, and this is more on the game designer's table, this difficulty and the unlocks of the other features. So there is, you know, a better flow from the story to, you know, challenge or grind, what have you. They did a lot of things there, which is again another whole presentation for game design. But yeah, this is how it goes forward. We find ideas, we start to sketch out something, you know, when we had an idea, so you do a whole lot of this. This was the start of the mission hub. Hey, how should we, you know, present all this kind of information, what should be on the screen? So you do a lot of this, and then you do a lot more of that. You do the mock-ups for the game. Hey, and you know, at every point of this, you know, I'm checking in with my team also. I'm sharing these screens with them. I'm letting them know the things I learn, or, you know, what problems am I facing. And, you know, I feel like my job is just so much easier when I feel like I let them work for me, but it just helps so much to get a different perspective. So what we then decided to do looked basically like this. So we were like, yeah, we are going to do this. We have this mission hub. We have our cool, you know, content featured here. Here you see your story. You see the rewards. Now you can actually see all of our features laid out. Unfortunately, I haven't added a screen how it was before. But, you know, this was there was nothing. There were only icons in the game in the main hub where you were like playing, and there were no names. You didn't know where you are going. You had a camp, you know, a little bit like Clash of Clans, where you collect resources and build buildings, and you didn't really know, okay, what does the other things do, and you might forget. So now you had the central accessibility point, all the features, all the rewards. It also said when they unlocked, you know, with timers and what have you. So now you again, at this point, you have you know, written something. You introduce it to your team. You know, for me, they are always, you know, my kind of gating process. Do they like it? Do they think I'm on the right track to solve the problem? You know, usually they are like, what is this? You know, have you thought about this, and why did you do this? And then, you know, you just keep iterating till maybe not everyone is happy, but till you feel like, yeah, this is you know, this really like addresses the problem that we set out, you know, to solve when we started. So yeah, and then we do something that we call a feature brief, and I really recommend this. It's pretty good. So you basically sit down now that you know you have a mock-up, you have an initial draft of how this should work, and you write down the product goals again. You write down the user stories. You write down partly the components of how this, you know, kind of works. It's like a point of reference. The thing is, also we do agile and things, change a lot. So this doesn't keep up to date, but it should basically have this initial idea of why did you do this thing. There can be the research from the initial segmentation, the product goals should be there. Even if you just have a small description, I think it's enough, and dump the screens there. But then there is something that you can share also. We have a lot of other disciplines in the company that need a point of reference, like player support or like marketing, so that there is something that they can check out. Of course, they always still need to check in with the team. Did something update or not? But overall, it really helps. And I also think that the moment you write it down, you might still find things that you actually haven't thought about. So it's really helpful. And then the production can basically start. That's when, what we saw earlier in the other talk, for example, that's when the sprint is starting. You have a design spec ready, so people can pick it up, and create something based on that. So we form something called a feature team, and basically there is someone from every discipline, and these people, back-end client programmer, UI artist, game designer, UXer, and these people are responsible to make these things. They have, it's all on their table. They are going to do it. They are going to do the decisions. They are going to do every additional iteration. They are going to do the user test. I think for us at least it really helped. We had problems earlier throughout development that, who's responsible for this thing? Who does this? So really, defining a team of people who do this thing, it really just helped to, keep things going forward. So yeah, I went over something. So they do a component breakdown. So now at this point, they also need to look at this, feature brief, for example, and they be like, okay, to make this thing, what do we need? All the logic, all the buttons, you need to go through every single piece to see how do we build this. And sometimes, for example, for a feature as big as this, you have an MVP, so you have, you have something minimum viable product, but then you have also something maximum, but half the features won't make it in. It's just how it goes. So they need to do an initial draft also, okay, what really makes it here? What is essential to this, game experience, and what we might add later or never usually. That's how it goes. And yeah, then you implement, you iterate, agile, we always, you've seen this this before, but this is not how we will end. There's still a lot of iteration. We do a lot of user testing. What I do, for example, whenever we have something that works in a build, I go and do a small user test at my company. I just, I just invite the whole company. I see who shows up in the kitchen, and we do half an hour. And you are just there to observe and to ask some questions. And something that we also needed to learn throughout this process is never explain anyone your design. I feel like that is my biggest lesson over the last years. It's so easy that when someone shows you a thing and you are like, yeah, but this is how it works. But no one will be sitting next to your users and telling them, this is how it works. So you just have to sit there and you have to be like, yes, I will write this down. And it's really a tough lesson. It sounds easier than it is, but not answering to these help, to these requests, people who seek help. That's tough, and you need to go back with your team and discuss these things that you have found that don't seem to be so easy to understand for people. Yeah, a lot of bug fixing and polish if you have time. We never had time, for example, for this polish, but nowadays we have, from production side, we have allocated 1 week after every sprint just for that, because we never were ready with these features. It doesn't happen, you still implement to the last day, and there is freeze, but that doesn't mean, for at least for us, when there is the freeze for the features, doesn't mean that it can go out like that. It's usually, there's always some tweaking, some feedback missing, some animation, or what have you, So I have to say it really helps to allocate a little bit of more time to, polish basically before QA. It can also start at the same time the QA, but it helps to have a little bit of more. So, this is what we set out to do, right? We wanted to have this cool accessibility hub. We tweaked the transition flows, we unlocked features earlier, and what we ended up with, what is currently in the game, for example, is this. So, this is how it goes with the iteration, with the agile. You thought you make this thing, and it kind of is still that thing, but you know, a lot has changed, you know, based on business needs or both based on, you know, user feedback. So this is where we are at now. And yeah, that's it. You have the thing, you release, and you know it's not over. You need to await, you know, player reaction. You know, for us, it's, for example, you know, I do this kitchen kind of test, small sample. If we are lucky, we have some playtest cloud, some, you know, bigger sample where we can test, but, you know, not always. So, you know, now it's the time that you are actually seeing, you know, does this thing work? Again, in the past, we didn't allocate really time to react on what we maybe found after initial release. But, you know, nowadays, again, we have someone for 1 week after each update who actually, you know, fixes not only stuff, but also looks at, hey, this thing that we decided to do, you know, is that, you know, working to a certain extent for people? Can they understand it? So yeah, you go back, you fix things, you add the missing feedback that what you thought, hey, this is not maybe necessary for the MVP, but then you find out, yeah, okay, it was necessary, let's add it. And for games, what comes in a lot, you know, it's about mechanics, you know, how do certain things under the hood work, how people progress, what do I need to collect to do the next thing, you know, also there, it's not always super clear. We need to look at that. And of course, you know, if you have time, you review the data. We did this feature because we did data research and we found a problem. You know, for this, for example, we never had the time to go back and review, did this do something? You know, again, this is just how it goes. If you can allocate it, you know, I definitely recommend it. Nowadays, it's like we have so many other things in the game. It's also just really hard to measure. We have so many features in there and so much new stuff, it's really crazy. You don't really know exactly anymore, okay, what is the one thing that tipped the scales necessarily. So yeah, this is how we work. You learn about your audience, you segment the data, ask the data guys in your company to you know, work with you, let them explain what they are doing. Maybe you can find pain points, then you can react on them, you can design solutions, create mock-ups, test with your team, hey, does this alleviate the problem? You implement, you iterate, and you test. And that's really it. So data as MVPs, that's my takeaways for you. If you have a data analyst in your company, then you are really far ahead. You know, go and talk to the person. These guys are awesome. They can help you learn so much about these people that you make the stuff for. It's really crazy. Second thing, a feature brief. You know, writing down what you know, decide to do helps to understand it more, find maybe flaws, you know, in what you have been setting out. And, you know, more power to the team with feature teams and also asking the team, you know, hey, we wanted to do this thing, what do you think? You know, this is not just, you know, the thing that you're working on, and maybe it's stronger in games, I don't know, but, you know, this is not my CEO's product or my marketing's product, you know, we are doing this thing, you know. So I feel like, you know, trust yourself and trust the teams to that they know what they are doing. Yes, and that's it. Thank you.